about the prior slide. See, okay, so you saw a big increase in foster care. I'm hearing there's a high incidence of cardiomyopathy in younger adults at SMH, and that it's linked to drug use, serious drug use, and that it's been a recent issue. Is there any data linking infants in foster care to drug use among young adults?
It's probably a combination of drug use and alcohol. So fetal alcohol syndrome also is one of the fastest growing situations here in the community. So
my question is, have you linked the incidence of foster care?
We have not. Okay. We have not. But we've got on the questionnaire, and one of the questions we're going to ask later is, what do you think are some of the things that we ought to be looking at? So I see Juliana's already making a note on that one. Already did this one, already did this one, already did this one, going backwards. Again, these are the 5 types of child abuse recognized by Florida: neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse, abandonment, and emotional abuse. And in a minute, we're going to look at what that looks like for adults, which is what we're looking at here. Rate of verified maltreatment and investigations for adults. Here again, Sarasota County is coming out on the high side when compared to the state of Florida. The aspects of abuse for adults are a little different. It does include neglect, does include abuse, self-neglect, and also exploitation. A lot of times financial exploitation. We've been reading a lot more about that in the local media. Rate of death from suicide. Here's an area where, again, Sarasota County is higher than the state. And if you want to understand how many people we're talking about here, again, it's an average of a 3-year rolling rate, but you would need to multiply this number by about 3.8 to get to the actual number of people who committed suicide on average within those 3 years in the state and the county. When we look at this by gender, what we find is that the males have a much higher rate of suicide than females, both within Sarasota County and in the state of Florida. And then when we look at rate of suicide for the younger of our population, we find that even at the ages of 10 to 19, we are not quite, but almost twice the rate of the state of Florida. So this was one of the data points that seemed to be most interesting for both students who participated in our roadshow events as well as adults. And the students began to talk about all the stress and pressure that they're under. And it was kind of interesting. We had some good conversation with them about that. Here's going to the other end of the spectrum, rate of death from suicide, age 65 to 100. Again, Sarasota, in this case, it's not a doubling effect, but still a substantial amount above the state average. Suicide risk factors, family history of suicide, history of mental disorders, feelings of hopelessness, social isolation being a key one, inaccessibility to mental health treatments, and then kind of these unexpected financial losses or other losses. And then just kind of looking at the social isolation aspect of things, Sarasota County has 25% of our adults 65 and above living alone, compared to 23% for the state of Florida. I don't know who's supposed to be doing these slides, so I'm going to keep rolling. And then one of the groups that we partnered with this year a little bit was the Universal Design Coalition. We learned a lot about the physical hazards at home for older adults and how the homes can be made safer. But looking at some of this data, each year 1 in 3 adults age 65 plus falls somewhere in the home. Half of the falls occur at home. Falls are a leading cause of injury and death. Risk of falling rises with age. And then the reasons why you fall at home: lack of grab bars, railings, poor lighting, tripping hazard, and probably all that drinking. Universal Design basically says, hey, can't we design our home environment and other places where we need to go in such a way that we've got flat surfaces and things we can grab onto, and cabinets at the correct height, so that we can live in our home and be happy to do so as we age. And so Universal Design has a number of principles, and there's a Universal Design Coalition here in Sarasota that's doing a lot to make people more aware of this. I see this almost like the green building that, when it first came out, it was people, very innovative people doing green building, and now everybody's kind of doing it. I think you're going to see the same thing with Universal Design. When it comes to, you want to do some of these, Juliana?
Can I pick up on that a little bit? The Pines has introduced a testing for stability and how likely one is to fall. And all you have to do is to contact them, and you can take the test in order to do it. One of the things I'd like to see encouraged is training on how to safely fall. Now that sounds like an oxymoron. However, many people in many sports are trained how to fall without injuring themselves severely. And I think that this could be a public information campaign that would be very beneficial in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. So these aren't my slides, John, but I'll do these slides. I know I can do them because you took some of mine, but that's okay. I'll just tell you what's happening up here. In the state of Florida and Sarasota, the rate of violent crime are going down. And the state of Florida is higher than Sarasota County. Property crime is also going down, again with the state of Florida being higher than Sarasota County. And arrests are going way down. Why is that? Do you know? Do you know why arrests are going down?
It's politically incorrect to arrest a criminal.
It's true. Youth arrests are going down too. And that might be due to some of the diversion programs going on, like teen court, where they have teenagers be the jury and the judge and the members of the court and have them resolve issues instead of being sent to the Department of Juvenile Justice. And then we just broke it down by, these are the youth arrests. You see that the majority of them are misdemeanors, and some of them are felonies, but the rates of all of them have been going down. Most of them are males, and a minority are females. And if we break it down by age, we see that the most common age to be arrested as a youth under 18 is 14 to 16. Then the second most common age is 17 and over, so 17 and sometimes 18. Thankfully, no 5 to 10-year-olds are getting arrested anymore, but that was a problem for a while. And then you see the racial discrepancy, which has been a big problem in the United States as of late. I'm sorry? Oh, okay. And it's a huge social movement right now, the disproportional incarceration of African American youth, especially due to drug charges and minor offenses. So African American youth make up 8% of Sarasota's population and 1/3 of youth arrests. So I find that absurd.
Well, if they do the crime, then they do the time.
No, we're just on
So
we're on
right.
the best way.
Yeah. So who rides a bike? Anyone? Good luck. Before we get into that, 82% of workers in Sarasota drive alone to work. That's more than the state of Florida and the United States, but not much more. But 1% take public transportation, less than both Florida and the United States. And that might be because only 55.2% of Sarasota workers actually work in Sarasota County.
Actually live here.
Sarasota residents actually work here, right? Yeah, so only 55% of the people who live here actually go to work in this county. Oh yeah, so here's where we get into the bicycle crashes. There were 1,756 crashes from 2007 to 2013. That's 250 crashes a year. And Sarasota ranks 3rd in the entire state of Florida for the most dangerous place to ride a bicycle. Most crashes happen on roadways, And can anyone guess what the most common roadway is for a bicycle crash to happen?
41.
41. What's the least common, you think?
It's probably Main Street.
The least common major roadway is University because it has a bike lane for the most part, so that really helps. So Tamiami Trail accounts for 33% of bike crashes, and then the other ones, Bee Ridge, Washington Boulevard, Tuttle, Beneva, Fruitville, Lockwood, 17th, Bahia Vista, Price.
Does anybody ride on Price?
I don't even know what Price is.
Nobody does.
Price is the main drag in Northport. Runs parallel to Tamiami Trail, north of the Tamiami Trail. One of the things about our community report card, we've been doing this since 2001. It continues to evolve. I came to Scope and was surprised to find that there was absolutely nothing in the report card about arts, culture, and recreation in the community. And so we started gathering some additional information. We just have a couple of slides. We're kind of getting to the end of our little presentation, but the staff brought me this one day, which I found intriguing. And this is showing the number of county-owned parks in Sarasota from 1998 to 2013, almost a doubling of the number of county-owned parks. This is not reflective of acreage, this is just reflective of the number of them. And then number of playgrounds, also kind of a steady increase with the population and such. 2002, 26, and up to 42 for 2013. This is not all of the playgrounds in the community. This is county-owned. This doesn't include playgrounds in city parks, nor does it include privately owned playgrounds. Number of athletic fields has gone through a similar progression over the years, trying to keep up with the growth of the population in the community. I'm going to zip through some of these others. We've got a section on civic engagement. Civic engagement generally is a combination of how engaged are people in voting, how are they engaged in volunteerism, and how are they using resources like the library. And so in this particular case, this is showing kind of voter turnout in the general elections in Sarasota County. And you can certainly see how the presidential elections have a tendency to pull out the larger percentage of voters, all the way up to 82% back in 2004, with the intermediate years pulling in a high of 61% back in 2002. And if you look at these numbers, they're steadily declining, which is kind of interesting. And then voter turnout by age, and this is for the 2014 general election. You see 70% of the population 65 and over went out to vote, but only 11.6%, or let's say 12% of the youngest age group, the 18 to 20, those people that have just gotten their voter registration cards, actually showed out to vote. And then percentage of residents with library cards. Sarasota County really excels in this regard. When you look at the state of 55% of the residents own a library card versus 75% for Sarasota County, it certainly shows a curious and engaged community in that regard. And this was just a little graphic that we put together showing the number of programs offered through the county library system, the attendance in those programs, and then broken out into children's, young adult, and adult programs. You see a lot of people taking advantage of those literacy and other type of programs that take place. And then we've got a section on the natural environment. We just pulled out a couple of slides. One of the things that occurred here in Sarasota was that the residents put a referendum together, and it created a mandatory recycling program. That program has been pretty successful with 47% of the solid waste recycled within Sarasota County compared to 35% for the state of Florida. Air quality is another area in which we, yes sir?
Just want to go back to solid waste. Are we including in that, like, umbrella statement, the bin separate from just the rough pickup? Because you're talking about recycling, I tend to think of like putting back into the use.
So this number is generated based upon the total amount of solid waste that goes to the landfill versus the amount that's recycled and is diverted from the landfill.
Okay, so 35
is for the state of Florida,
yeah,
and 47 is for Sarasota County.
So that's the recycled percentage.
This would be the total, this would be 47% of the volume of solid waste is recycled in Sarasota County. So that's your bottles, your cans, your paper, your plastics, your cardboard, and all that stuff.
Thanks.
Air quality, Sarasota County, because of the way that industry has been regulated here, we actually enjoy some very good air, and the percentage of days per year where the air quality levels are of a health concern, what you're looking at here is the percentage of good days and the percentage of moderate days. And so almost 85% of the days in Sarasota County have a rating of good on air quality. And then we took a look at some of the long-lived critters like the loggerhead sea turtles nesting on local beaches. And because we have some of the darkest and least built-on beaches in the state, we have an awesome number of loggerhead sea turtle nests. One of the reasons why I also like to include this slide is because marine turtles don't nest every year, so you can't look at it year to year. Some of them nest every 2 or 3 years, and so you'll have high years and low years, but there's definitely, it's pretty cool when you've got 4,000 nests in your community, and if you compare that, for instance, to Charlotte County, they have less than a quarter of that, and Manatee County far less than that. So Sarasota's really done a good job of maintaining great beaches for nesting turtles. And green turtles, which used to be here 100 years ago and were driven almost to extinction through the fisheries of the West Indies and Cuba, have now been on the rebound. And you see a very remarkable recovery shown here by a total of 91 green turtle nests that were documented in 2013. Green turtles are the turtles that they used to make soup out of. They had a much harder time than the loggerheads. So that kind of wraps up giving you a little bit from each of the domains of well-being, and we just wanted to kind of poll the group a little bit and ask which of these were the most interesting to you?
Well, are they starting to farm the green turtles now so we can still have green turtle soup?
There are places in the world where that does occur.
We thought the Alice data was really interesting. Thank you. I like the Alice data and the reduced lunch, I mean the free lunch, you know, that was very surprising.
I have a question about who funds SCOPE.
SCOPE is funded through a local government, corporate sponsors or corporate partners, donations, and projects that we do for other nonprofits. So we will do data work and we'll do community engagement work for other nonprofits or local government. We haven't gotten into the realm of doing it in business. We can work in Charlotte County or Manatee County or DeSoto County because oftentimes it's hard. If you're doing a project in Inglewood, you're spanning 2 counties. If you're on the north side of Sarasota, you're edging up against Manatee. And so we're a nonprofit 501c3 organization. If anybody likes what we're doing and you want to help us, we've got some envelopes up here up front.
What's your website address?
Our website address is scopexcel.org. So that's Scope, SCOPEXCEL.org. Or you can just Google us, Scope Sarasota, which is the easiest way to find us.
She got something to say? Yeah.
Hi, I was just curious. I noticed you didn't have a slide about anything to do with traffic congestion or increases in trip times between home and work. Is that something that's in the larger study online?
There's a little bit more on accidents and things like that, but not what you just described. So the team has taken some notes on what you think might be interesting.
That's politically incorrect to look at that because the developers don't want the subject broached.
Scope is a politically neutral organization, and I think, as you can see, we look and dive into all sorts of things that other people don't, so we're not afraid of doing any of that. What we've done is, when we went to update this report card, we took all the trend lines that we had worked on before, and we updated them, and then we kind of brainstormed around what we thought was missing, so we can always add other things, and in fact, we're constantly adding new things.
John, excuse me, from all the people that I've spoken to throughout the community in the last few years, I would have to say that the #1 topic that people would like to know more about or that they would like to have others take a better look at is traffic congestion.
Right, and I guess the way I should have answered the first question, and I'll just answer the 2 of them, is that Scope did a report a number of years ago all about traffic. It was a study group report. It was a multi-month effort. And we were, I think, one of the first to recommend, in addition to other strategies, an automated traffic control system as a way to alleviate that. And we suggested that, you know, before that was a really well-known or popular thing to do. So one of the things we've been thinking about is going back to some of those early study group reports and then reviving a new group and revisiting the recommendations, seeing what's changed since then and seeing what might need to change in the future. Because again, I mentioned real quick earlier, and I apologize for talking so fast the way I do, but we've done them on affordable housing, we've done them on transportation, we've done it on infill and redevelopment, we've done them on race relations, we've done them on mental health, and we've got a whole series of these study group reports, which were much more than just data, but also getting people's ideas and opinions in the mix.
Yeah. Not that there are only 400 people here. I just want to say a couple things. One is, oh, you want? Well, I can hold it. Just let me have it. I want to first of all compliment my son the fact of having so many parks. And I suspect your hand had a hand in that, but
I don't know anything about
last I looked, there were 100, 145, 150. I mean, in this county, we have that many parks. It's incredibly wonderful. And I thought it was really good that the new college students had a hand in putting this together, because from my experience, that tells me that new college students are getting a real opportunity to employ their knowledge acquisition in a real life setting, and it helps them because they take away useful knowledge, and we benefit from that as a community. And the other thing that I wanted to make a point is the universal home design. And I first saw that about 10 years ago popping up here. And with our population being on the increase of the 60 pluses, that's really a critical point. And I think that we're probably going to be leading the country in that subject, because there's such a really good laboratory to work with in this community.
Well, we better be leading the country because we're ahead of the country on that one, right?
Yeah, well, population.
Yeah.
The statistic on binge drinking was kind of surprising, and particularly, that feels like it's going into it now. Particularly the suggestion that that number was up because of elderly not able to get pain pills. And that made me think of the shift in drug abuse that we've heard about, from oxy to, say, heroin. I wonder if there's data that can sort of track the types of drug abuse going on and trends in different types because of action by the government against this or that, or enforcement.
Yeah, I'm sure we haven't harnessed it, but I'm sure there's information out there about the number of overdoses, near overdoses, and that sort of thing. So, certainly a concern in the community.